Good morning and welcome to Thank Dog We Made It. Today I'm going to talk to you about fit and specifically about what happens when you've made a coat and it looks just great on them. It fits them, you put it on them and it looks really good. When they're standing there, it just seems like it's a good fit. But what can happen as soon as they start moving, you start to see some problems. So I'm going to get into some photographs to show you what I'm talking about right from the beginning here. So here's a coat that I made for a dog. They bought a coat that was already made. So they thought it fit perfectly. They put their dog into the coat and the dog was standing there and it fit really well. I mean, it seemed as though the fit was really good. It was a good length on the dog, seemed like it was a good fit across the chest. But what happened is once it started moving, let me just go through a few of the other photos here. Once the dog sat down, you can see, I'm going to zoom in a little bit here. You can see that there's some stress going on here. See where the join is right here? You can start to see some of these wrinkles. So as the dog sat down, it started to get tighter across the chest. So that was the first point that they realized that there was a little bit of a problem. And then I'll put on to the next one. And when we're looking at this one too, and I'm going to zoom in again, you can see that the dog, right around again in this area in here, once the dog started sitting down, you can see there's some stress points. So stress point around the head where the hood area attaches, like the top of the coat attaches to the chest portion, and also down here where the bottom of the chest portion attaches to the coat. So what happens, as I've said before, is when a dog coat doesn't fit properly, when a dog coat doesn't fit quite properly, what it'll do is it'll push the coat into the area that is the most stressed. So the chest area in this particular circumstance is the most tight on, the most stressed in the measurement and the fit of the coat. And so the whole coat is kind of being pulled into that direction. When the dog was standing there, it looked great, but as soon as it gets sitting down or walking or moving, it starts pulling into the direction where the chest is. So you can really see that as we go through these photos here. So and again here, we're going to look at the stress point. So this is when the dog is actually walking. You can see its front paw is ahead. It's starting to move in this, and you can really start to see those wrinkles here, those stress points. When it was sitting, the stress point was kind of right around where the chest joined the coat at the bottom. But as it starts walking, the stress point is around the neck area. And the other thing that the dog owner told me is while it was moving and walking, she would come back from a walk and she would find that the dog's fur all on its chest was super matted. And that was because this really tight chest area here was rubbing and rubbing and rubbing while it was walking. So what we ended up doing was a fairly simple change. Here is the pattern this is the slicker pattern that I just showed you on the photographs. So this pattern works like this, where this portion here wraps around that side on the body part of the coat, and then this portion here actually attaches to that. These two parts attach, and it wraps underneath the dog's body. So I'll show you the live coat itself. So this portion here matches that portion there. That's the tummy portion of the coat, and that wraps around underneath the legs of the dog and wraps around on the side of the dog. This part of the pattern is the chest portion, and that's what attaches up here. So it's sewn into the back piece, and it wraps around, and it actually attaches to this. So these two pieces would attach. Clearly the pattern is much smaller than the actual coat we're looking at, but you can start to get a picture of how this coat works. And then this is the back piece. So this portion, as I said, it wraps around and it attaches by Velcro to this, just as you can see here. So this coat, as I said, its biggest challenge on the dog is that it's too tight on the chest area. So I would be changing this piece. I think this would be a pretty simple change. I would just be simply making this a little bit wider. So first, let's look at how you measure your dog in this particular problem. If you see that the dog coat is really tight in the chest, I would start looking at how it fits across the chest area here. So this is the chest width measurement. And you're going to go from the widest point on the dog's front legs and measure across that. So you find those bones where their legs are, the widest point on their chest, and then measure across. And then you take that measurement and you apply it to the pattern. So this pattern here, this is not the right size pattern for the dog, but let's say that that measurement was 9 inches across. This pattern is on the fold, so I would divide that in half. So that would be 4.5 inches that this piece should be. This piece is actually, and so where you're measuring that, when you measure that widest part across the chest, as I just showed you on the dog, you compare that to the widest point on this pattern here. So if I measured across here, and I'm saying, okay, I want to have 9 inches, this is actually 4 inches, so I would want to add an extra 1/2 inch into the pattern. So I would simply cut along here, this line right here, it's a lengthen shorten line. I would cut along there and I would spread it and then add an extra piece of paper in there for 1/2 inch difference, tape it back together, and that should take care of the problem. It's a fairly straightforward change. Probably that's all you're going to need to do. Now, one thing to note is that this piece matches up with this piece. These two pieces are sewn together. They're separate pattern pieces because the fabric you're cutting is different. This is a stretch fabric and this is a waterproof fabric. So they are different pattern pieces, but you need to make sure they add up, or they match up, I should say. So if I cut along here and I added an extra 1/2 inch, I need to do the same thing here. I just need to cut down here and spread that so that I have an extra 1/2 inch. And you may or may not have to, depending on the way that you alter it, you may have to also replace this section. But given that that area there actually fit the dog fairly well, you could, if we go back to this piece here, if we were looking at this, you could make that change over here where it's not affecting the center fit, like that center channel that runs through the dog's legs. If you made that slice and spread it open over here, that would simply be affecting this portion of the dog coat and it wouldn't be changing this channel. So if you wanted to do that and not affect this portion that wraps around the dog's side, I would do that. I would cut it over here and make the spread over there instead, and that would keep this area here the same. So hopefully that makes sense. And if you have any questions whatsoever about what I've gone over here, let me know in the comments. I've also got my email down below in the description, so feel free to send me questions if you have any questions on that. Also, as I always say, if you are having a problem with a pattern that's completely different, feel free to send along a question to me either through comments on a video or use that email address that's down below and ask me questions, and feel free to send me photographs. I love it when people send me photos of real problems that they're dealing with, because I can help them troubleshoot that problem, but it also gives me great examples to show other people. Because if you're having a problem with a fit, there's no doubt that someone else is having the same kind of issue. So I love it when people send me. So feel free to send your photos along to me at any time. We'll see you next week. I'm live every Thursday at 11 a.m. Pacific. If you enjoyed this video, please do give it a thumbs up and give a follow to my channel, because of course, the more that followers I get and the more likes that this video gets, the more YouTube knows that this is the kind of content that people are liking. So I really appreciate getting that kind of support, and that'll help this channel grow. All right, have a fantastic week. We will see you next week. Okay, bye-bye.